Thank you for speaking with us. We will now hear from Harriet Tubman.
My revolts against slavery began at a young age. For example, even though it was illegal for slaves to marry, I married John Tubman in 1844. Another thing about me is that I was a coveted member of the Underground Railroad. I helped dozens of slaves escape. My success convinced slave owners to leave a $40,000 reward for my capture. During the Civil War, I served as a nurse, cook, spy, and scout. My work in the Civil War provided the Union with key information about the Confederacy. For example, I would disguise myself as an aged lady and ask the enslaved population questions about the Confederacy. After gathering the information, I would take it up north. My efforts in the abolition movement were profound for just one person, and I was seen as the Moses of my people. My contributions were very significant because I was able to support the push for African American freedom and give many slaves around the country hope.
Now we will go on to William Tecumseh Sherman for elaboration on his military campaigns.
I am a Union general known for my service in the Civil War. My numerous successful battles gave me fame in the colonies. My most successful military campaign was my march to the sea. Traveling for 50 miles in 37 days, I led my troops to a campaign of destruction. Destroying all that could help the Confederacy, my men destroyed crops, homes, railroad tracks, buildings, and looted anything that contained any sort of material. This campaign was infamous for its ruthless destruction. This military tactic, ironic to the cause of the Civil War, was used to try and intimidate Confederate followers to abandon their beliefs.
Thank you. We will talk to our next guest, Ulysses S. Grant. Mr. Grant is the United States' 18th president. Hello, Mr. Grant. What can you tell us about yourself?
Thank you for having me on your show. I was born in 1822 to an Ohio tanner. I went to the military school West Point against my will and ended up serving General Zachary Taylor in the Mexican-American War. When the Civil War broke out, I was appointed to command an unruly volunteer regiment, which I quickly brought under control. I am known for my success in winning control of the Mississippi Valley. Throughout the war, I rose through the ranks and was appointed as General-in-Chief in March 1864. I was declared a war hero during the Civil War. Moving on, I was elected the 18th president. When I was elected the 18th president, I was bewildered at first and looked to Congress for direction. I understood that the nation was seeking an end to the ongoing turmoil, but I needed to adjust myself to my new role as president. I was incredibly valuable to the nation's reconstruction after the Civil War. My work in reconstruction, including trying to protect the civil rights of freed African Americans, is probably one of my most significant actions. After my presidency, I became a partner in a financial firm.
Now let's move on to our guest, General Mccullen. What were your contributions to the war, Mr. Mccullen?
I am General Mccullen, an organizer of the Union Army of Potomac. When the Civil War broke out, I was appointed as Major General of the Ohio Volunteer Army. Then, the Ohio Governor William Dennison encouraged Lincoln to commission me as a Major General in the regular army, one of the highest rankings for an individual. I worked hard to prevent Kentucky from seceding. I also protected West Virginia from being taken over by Confederate troops. During this time, I had created a strong bond with the men I led. While I received criticism from others after I failed to use resources to my advantage during the Battle of Antietam, the men I led always respected me. Later, in 1864, I began getting involved politically when I ran as a Democratic candidate against President Lincoln. I lost the election as Lincoln earned a second term. I personally feel that I am significant to the Civil War because of my military contributions. Even though I ended up getting removed by Lincoln from my position, I was able to boost morale amongst my men and save lives.
Moving on to our next segment, our segment about all Civil War battles. We're going to talk about the Vicksburg Battle. Vicksburg was controlled by the Confederacy and was a connection for the two halves of the Confederacy. Thus, The Union attempted, several times, to take control of Vicksburg. In 1863, the command of General Grant sieged Vicksburg after a series of gruesome battles and travels took place. Once the Union had Vicksburg, it drastically weakened the Confederacy as they were now geographically divided. By being geographically divided, it drastically reduced the Confederacy's economy by cutting off exports and imports from other regions. This depleted the Confederacy's overall supply of goods and weakened their army, creating a lasting legacy for Vicksburg as helping the Union. Moving on to our next battle. In 1861, Lincoln sent new troops and equipment to Fort Sumter. The Confederacy agreed to let the troops enter if they peacefully surrendered. The Union troops refused to surrender, and in response, Confederate troops attacked. With a low amount of ammunition, the Union troops surrendered. This brought the start of the Civil War, one of the most perilous times of the United States' history, making the events at Fort Sumter vital and really significant in the United States' history. Moving on to our next battle, the Battle of Bull Run. This battle was one of the first major battles of the Civil War. On the Union side of the battle, General McDowell had a volunteer army with about 35,000 troops that headed from Washington, D.C. On the Confederate side, Confederate troops were stationed west of Centreville behind Bull Run Creek. During the battle, Confederate forces hoped to block Union forces from advancing into the Confederate capital. The battle ended up as a win for Confederate forces. The significance of this battle is that, because of it, General McDowell was replaced by General Mccullen, who organized the Potomac Army for the Union. We will now move on to our final segment, talking about Northern advantages versus Southern advantages in the Civil War. The North had a larger population compared to the South. The North also had more industries that could support the war and more resources. Similarly, the North also had more railroad mileage and ships. Also, slaves who supported the Union agreed to spy for the North. Finally, the North was led by Abraham Lincoln, a strong and decisive leader. Now for Southern advantages. The Confederacy had stronger support from its citizens because the South was fighting to defend their own land. The South was also familiar with the territory because they were fighting once again on their own land. Along with that, the South had strong military skills and leadership. Now on to Northern disadvantages. In the North, not all citizens supported the war, creating hostility. Furthermore, the Southern territory Union soldiers were fighting in was unknown to them. Now for the Southern disadvantages. The South had a smaller population, fewer factories, lower railroad mileage, and fewer ships than the North. The Confederacy also had lower food production due to the Union blockade. Jefferson Davis, the Confederate leader, was unable to raise enough funds or create alliances with European countries. Moreover, the South faced the constant threat of slave rebellion because the slaves supported the North.
The battle was... Okay, I'm just... can you hear my dogs, like, fighting in the background?
Not really.
Okay. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to wait for a second because my dogs are like going crazy. Guys, I just recorded something in the background. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna try and do that again. You're screaming. Oh, okay, guys, can you please be quiet for a second? Be quiet for like a minute. Kind of a bad time. Okay, I'm gonna try again. Okay,